Council, including transferring outside Australia. The City of Adelaide acknowledges the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet on today. We acknowledge and honour their spiritual and cultural stewardship of this country and recognise their deep and enduring relationship with its lands, waters, the sky and all living things. We pay our respects to Kaurna elders past and present and recognise the important role of emerging leaders in sustaining and strengthening culture. We have an apology from Councillor Abrahimzadeh, leave of absence from Councillor Giles and Martin. I now seek a mover and seconder for the confirmation of the minutes of the 5th of May. Councillor Kabada and Councillor Snape. I put this motion to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Right, we have only one item on the agenda tonight. We don't actually, does any council members wish to make a conflict of interest? No? We have no deputations and no workshops, and our first report for recommendation to Council is the update on the World Heritage listing for the Adelaide Parklands and Rural Settlement Landscapes. And I'll now pass on to Ilya to give an intro to that item.
Thank you, Chair. Given the report is a noting report on progress, happy to take it as read. Okay, Councillor Steventry.
Thank you, Chair. Through your question for the administration, I'm curious as to whether there's ever been a list of activities identified that are considered incompatible with a World Heritage listed site. Have we ever undertaken such work, or just be curious what might be on such a list?
Thank you, and through the Chair, I probably want to seek clarification. I don't know if we'd be in a position to answer that question. If through the lens of the City of Adelaide, I'm not aware of us progressing other bids of this nature, and it would be difficult for me to talk either at the national level where the Australian government supports or denies bids, or on behalf of UNESCO on what activities they deem as worthy or not worthy.
So, noting your question, and thank you for that, I understand it's without notice. Do we know whether, and this may be equally difficult to answer, but do we know whether UNESCO would maintain a list of activities that aren't permitted? I assume you can't just go and do any old thing in a World Heritage listed site.
Thank you for the addition to the question. In specifics, I have to take part of that on notice to see if any of the rules or the documentation that UNESCO has speaks to what's ruled out. Perhaps the flip of that is certainly the work that has been done by the City of Adelaide over time has been an engagement with experts in the body to ensure that the approach we're taking it does look for a listing that is congruent with a cultural listing under the UNESCO banner, and that therefore we're going down a path with the World Heritage listing of the Adelaide Parklands and the Rural Settlement Landscapes. That's something that's consistent with what UNESCO deems appropriate. That's then subject to a whole series of elements such as its universal value proposition, does it have all the various consents of the parties. So on that end, the path that we're taking on this particular bid at this point in time does align with the principles and interests of UNESCO.
Through you, Chair, if there is any further information available, it would be wonderful to see that, to see what you can and can't do within a World Heritage listed area.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. So in the next steps, the finalisation of the marketing and comms material about this process, which is a very long process. I think many people don't appreciate just how complicated and long it can take. What is our timing for that comms and marketing material, given a lot of people obviously are questioning what's happening in the parklands at the moment, and this is a positive step for the parklands, indicating that we do respect their purpose and we seek to protect that rather. So I'm just wondering what the timing is of that material, given it's attached to the actual submission, and whether there's an opportunity to put something out a bit sooner.
Thank you for the question, and through the Chair. Probably the first point I'd make, which is clear through the briefing, and this point is to talk a little bit to the timing, is until we land free, prior and informed consent, we don't have authority to progress a bid under the current rules of UNESCO. So in context of those next steps about when we would then look to actively market the bid, it's probably important to note that without the consents in place, whilst we have the proposition for a tentative bid list submission, we don't have a formal bid. So part of point 27.3 talks to how we promote the bid itself, and we'll be able to activate communications with more specific reference once we clear those milestones. And we have, and again, importantly, this is what we're doing, and we're tentatively listed. There's still then a process to go through for the World Heritage listing process. Half a step behind that, and the team may be able to augment this comment with a couple of extra details, talking to and promoting the fact that we're going through a process to seek World Heritage listing, and where we're at in the process is certainly something that we can talk to and communicate with, and be open about the fact that we're going through free, prior and informed consent and those stages. Also, all of the material that we've brought to Cattle Tiller and to Council, we're able to use and utilise as evidence and communication of the process we're undertaking. So, Sarah, I don't know if there's any other specifics to highlight, but they'd be the two paces working back to front on comms and marketing.
Councillor Girls?
Forgive me if you've detailed this in some other paperwork, but in the 2025-26 budget, we included 178,000 for the World Heritage bid. I'm just wondering, have we expended all that money, or where are we at?
Yes.
Yes, so it's all gone. So do we need further funds in order to do any further work? 60k is already given, other funding sources, but is that enough for now, or is there more required?
Thank you, and through the chair, to clarify the reference to 60,000 first, if that helps committee. There was consortium funding, so partner councils, and we still hold a reserve of 60,000 available to the project to expend on progressing the aims of the World Heritage listing at the tentative stage as we are currently. This is the type of project, if I can perhaps describe it this way, that as we get through approval points, we absolutely will require more resource to continue to undertake the detailed investigations that are required, to complete a full nomination dossier, which is the UNESCO language that forms part of the submission, and then as foreshadowed or referenced earlier with the question from Councillor Freeman, there is some elements that are critical around communication and promotion of the bid. So yes, and we did foreshadow in the 2026-7 budget process, should we get to those stages, the type of investment that would be needed to progress in the following year.
So just so I'm clear, you'll come to us once this consultation has taken place and taken the next steps to what more funds are required? Is that right?
In short, if we proceed through FPIC and we're looking like we're progressing past tentative bid list submission, yes, we've previously foreshadowed, we would then need more resource to continue the listing process.
So just on that point, so it takes around 4 years if everything goes smoothly, is my understanding. Plus, that's ambitious.
It's certainly the evidence we've seen on a whole range of different types of listing is there are shorter ones which are still multiple years, and there are longer ones which are longer.
Yeah. Have we done a financial sort of assessment on this over a long period of time of what a ballpark figure would be, and would that be in the long-term financial plan?
Through the presiding member, I think the advice Mr Harides is providing the committee is that we've had an existing resource pool to move this project along in 25-26. While we're towards the end of that budget allocation, it's pretty much people resources to move through the finalisation of the FPIC process, so there's no additional funding required at this time. Once we get through FPIC, that'll lead us through the natural next steps of the listing, and we will come back to council through quarterly reviews or indeed the 27-28 budget as required to ensure that this project is appropriately funded.
Councillor Snape.
Thank you, and it is following on a similar vein. My understanding is if you were successful in getting World Heritage listing, there is a significant benefit both to the City of Adelaide and the wider metropolitan Adelaide, both in tourism, economic value, etc. The state government has offered in principle support previously, but right now my understanding is it is the City of Adelaide that is shouldering the burden alone, unless I'm mistaken. Has there been any overtures from the state government in regards to helping shoulder some of that financial cost, considering there will be benefit outside of the City of Adelaide as well to surrounding metropolitan Adelaide?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, the city has tested this previously and will continue to at each stage of the process. So it makes sense to us that through the Department of Environment and Water, which is where the heritage arm is, and the state government, that will continue to seek appetite, noting that the listing is broader than the City of Adelaide. Probably important to point out as well that whilst we have shouldered, we have had partners in other councils, and I've mentioned the contributions that we have received from other councils over time, but the council is leading both from an effort of staff and resource. But we would continue to put that proposition to the state as we get to different stages, both for support for consent to progress the bid, but also financial support towards the investigations and otherwise.
And to comment then on that, if I may, I think it is definitely a worthwhile endeavour, and I thank the staff and the leadership of this council for doing so. But yeah, getting that concrete support, probably concrete is not the best word to use, that support from the state government will be a wonderful thing to see it progress and see our city placed on yet another map in the global arena. Thank you. Elliot.
And not just on water issues, I think it's a state government development opportunity as well. That's what it's pitched at. So we're talking about SATC and a range of tourism. Yeah. Do you want to comment on that? No? Agree? Councillor Marr.
Thank you. A couple of questions, maybe just rapid fire. So right now we don't need any more money, we're good.
Correct.
When we do need more money, that will come through a quarterly review. It doesn't need to go into a budget.
It doesn't need to go into the initial 26-27 budget.
Okay. And then the last question, which is the substantial question. I'm reading online, how might World Heritage listing affect me? And it seems to me that we're listing the concept as opposed to the specific qualities of a particular area. So it's not like heritage listing a house, it's heritage listing the idea of having a house there, right? So comparing that to our national heritage listing, similar, lists the concept, parklands must be in a circle around the area with a figure 8 in the middle, and that's what's listed. It's not the specific grass in the space, right? Is that similar to our World Heritage listing, but on a larger scale? Because it's not Adelaide Parklands and City, it's rural landscapes.
Thank you for the question through the chair. Sarah will talk to all of the specifics, and it may point a little bit back to Councillor Siebentritt's question on the reverse about the differentiation between the standards we need to meet for UNESCO versus National Heritage listing. So there is some differences in that process. But Sarah, if you could outline the characteristics of the submission and what is covered by listing.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, you're quite correct. World Heritage listing can be for a property. In this case, we're looking at listing a cultural landscape. So in that respect, it is similar to the National Heritage listing, where it is about the colonisation and the Wakefield pattern of settlement, which then does take in broader areas, certainly focused on the city and the parklands layout, but related to other parts of the state that were settled.
Lord Mayor?
Can I say that I think the stakeholder engagement's insufficient? And it talks about tourism experts and operators, but the experience I've had with state organisations promoting World Heritage List has been quite disappointing. I don't know how many people have been to the Narra Court Caves and been through them. doesn't seem to have attracted a large investment over recent years. And one of the challenges is that there's almost limited benefit unless you actually invest in the asset once it's been listed. So I think that the challenge for us is to ensure that it's not local government tourism officials. This list doesn't seem to really connect to the state government bodies that will do the marketing, which would actually be the Tourism Commission or Tourism Department as well. And if you go to the World Heritage assets that we've got in this state, it is quite disappointing that so little investment has gone into them. I think tourism does promote narrow court, but the Department of the Environment, I don't think really does very strongly. They obviously invest in the assets. In terms of what's happened to our sister city, Georgetown, Penang, they World Heritage listed their city and have then invested a significant amount of money in protecting the assets, enhancing them. And so I think we have to understand that if we're successful, it's going to take a lot more lobbying than just speaking to a few food and wine producers. And we need to actually engage the state government departments.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a question on a similar vein as the Lord Mayor. I note the report talks about the relevant agencies, the Department for Environment and Water, but the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan talks about the World Heritage bid as well and what that boundary might be, and that sits in the Department for Housing and Urban Development. Have they been involved in discussions to date, or has it been limited to due and also excluding tourism and other agencies?
Thank you for the question, and through the Chair, if I pick up on both of those points, it's section 20 of the report where we've listed a selection of stakeholders. That list is not exhaustive, so the team does have quite a detailed stakeholder mapped process. And in regards to the specific question about the Greater Adelaide Regional Plan, that was City of Adelaide's submission, seeking that was included, so we are in contact with the department regarding progression of the bid.
Through the Chair, I would add as well that that's included engagement with the South Australian Tourism Commission as well through this process. So both those agencies have been regularly engaged and relevantly engaged at key points.
Councillor Davis.
By my reckoning, we could look or hope to have the listing by 2035. Is that the approximate time frame of when we will look to have it?
Thank you for the question. No, we haven't stated 2035 as the approximate time frame. We will be subject at this stage to FPIC, state and federal approvals, and then the progress of the dossier. It's difficult for us to estimate because it's subject to approvals and acceptances that include UNESCO. Through that process, the advice we have is they may come back to us for clarifications or further work. So it's difficult to give a concrete time frame, noting those different checkpoints on when the work would be complete, but there's evidence of many bids progressing in the 4-year time frame or out to 8 years or more.
Because I could just be making this up, but UNESCO bids, my understanding is it's 8, 14 years, 15 years, it takes a long time. So could it be, like it could well be after 2035 if everything kind of goes well like that? That's the possible time frame. It's not going to be next year, for example. It's not going to be the next 5 years.
Sarah?
Thank you for the question through the Chair. I think it's fair to say World Heritage is a staged process, and so what we've been talking to there's a series of gateways to get through. We'd like to think the tentative list submission work that we've done would be a shorter time frame because there's been the investment in that particular stage. Some of our framing in this report, if you look at it, does talk to the bicentenary. That's not a fixed date, but that's certainly an ambition that we would be having conversations ahead of 2036.
Can I just ask one more question? It feels like your application should be World Heritage listed. It'll be that old by the time it gets through. But that's not your fault. It's the process. What would be the overall cost throughout the whole fiasco for the City of Adelaide? What would be the total envisaged cost?
Thank you through the chair again. Dependent on direction we get about the nature of some of the investigations we need to conclude, we anticipate to be in a stronger position to give you some more definitive advice once we get past tentative list submission stage. But I couldn't give you a solid figure at this point in time until we get past that checkpoint.
Because I do feel that we do need a solid figure of an estimate of how much it's going to cost. Because if this does go for another, up to the bicentenary, I think it's important that we as a council know how much that commitment's going to be, because that could well be $2 million over the next 10 years or so, or is it 1 million, or is it 500,000?
I think if I can give some confidence, a fair bit of that time sits in approval and assessment. So it's not that we will have staff working on it year on year for each time. Once we've completed the tentative submission, as we've just described, we're not seeking further funds. That's a process now where we cover FPIC. We'll be able to frame what the work is to complete the dossier, and then we're basically in the approach that says that's our investment and effort. We're now subject to the approvals and reviews. Probably the final point then for consideration is, once you have the listing, anticipating that obviously everything goes as council would intend, it's then what's the degree of investment to optimise that listing opportunity from an economic development lens or otherwise, and that becomes a contingent cost about how we activate that particular designation as a city and all of the other relevant partners. But the bid itself, we think we should be able to give you an estimate of what that next stage is, and then there are chunks of time which we're not active in. We're just anticipating feedback and approvals.
Can I ask one more then, if there aren't any other? I know we have to go to the next item. But if the state government says that they're in principle support, but in actuality they're not in support, could they just hold up this entire process, never finalise it, and then we've just wasted all of our money and time of our ratepayers for something that might be delivered in 3 or 4 council terms? Maybe.
I can't speak for the state government, but at the moment the exposure is the cost of the tentative bid list submission, and we'll know in the coming months if we have support to go to the next stage or not.
Okay, members, any more questions? If not, I seek a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Kabata, seconded by, I don't know who put up their hand first. I don't think I did, or else I would have called it. Eeny, meeny, Council Davis. There we go. Okay, would you, no, I'm sorry, I did not see it. Would you like to speak to this? Councillor Davis, would you like to speak to this?
I'm concerned that this could be... I'm concerned that the state government could publicly say they're in principle support for it, and then in actuality they're not. It gets held up for 8 years running around the department, and the minister just sits on it. Successive councils won't have the ability to really ram it through, which basically means that this could well be an expense borne by our ratepayers unnecessarily for something that might not be delivered until 2035 or 2036 if we're lucky. So I'm cautiously pessimistic about the actual granting of it, which is quite a shame. But I think certainly that this won't, for the imminent issues that are happening in the parklands, this, I'm afraid, won't be much of a protection or much of a comfort at all. And then everything that subsequently happens, my understanding is that that's the more trees that are lost, like the heritage tree or whatever that was planted in 1860, for example, if that's lost, then that listing of that site will then be further degraded as we go forward. So it seems to me like it's becoming an impossible task. So I'm cautiously pessimistic about the project.
Councillor Steventry.
Through you, Chair. I will support this, but further my questions earlier on, which is the angle of my questioning, I am concerned that we're at a point where we're investing significant sums of money, as well as people's time, commitment, passion and energy into World Heritage listing when we're not 100% clear whether some of the activities currently being proposed are indeed aligned, or I don't know whether the word compliant is appropriate, but whether they're aligned with what's required with World Heritage listing. So I do look forward to getting more information on that. Seems like there's been a lot of effort go into this to date. It'll be sad and disappointing if that was all for naught because proposed future uses aren't aligned with World Heritage listing.
Lord Mayor.
I think there's been so much support for this bid that, particularly at the moment, it would be irrational for us to just forget it and walk away from it. I think we've invested too much energy, too much social capital, too much political capital, and it would be unconscionable if we told the state or federal government that we were backing off now, because particularly in the current environment.
Councillor Marr.
I'm enthusiastically optimistic.
Anyone else would like to speak? Councillor Freeman.
Yes, I also speak in support of this, and just to comment on, I mean, so this does say we're noting engagement that's occurred and marketing, and we're developing some next steps as part of the actual bid. But just to circle back to my original comments, I think in light of recent events, it would be very reassuring to really sell what we have done in this space and what's coming next. It is a really positive thing that we're pursuing for the parklands that does have support across all levels of government. I think that's important to state. If there's been any engagement with UNESCO as well, and I know that generally that happens at the bid stage, but we're the City of Music under UNESCO. I'm sure we've got a contact. Maybe they've got suggestions for some music events in the parklands. I don't know. But I think just making that really well known right now that Council remains committed to this World Heritage listing, which is really important, would be very welcomed, I'm sure.
Thank you. Would the mover like to sum up?
Summed up.
Okay, I will put this to a vote. All in favour? Carried unanimously. And that's the end of this, the meeting. And thank you, Sarah and Colleen and Ilya.
Okay, members are being quorum. I declare the meeting of the City Community Services and Culture Committee open and advise that this meeting will be recorded and streamed live to City of Adelaide website. Please note that an audio and visual recording is being taken of this meeting. This means that your presence at and any contribution you make to a meeting may be collected, used, disclosed or published publicly by the Council, including the transferring outside Australia. The City of Adelaide acknowledges the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains as traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. We acknowledge and honour their spiritual and cultural stewardship of this country and recognise their deep and enduring relationship with its land, water, sky and all living things. And we pay our respects to Kaurna elders past and present and recognise the important role of emerging leaders in sustaining and strengthening culture. Apologies and a leave of absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Abraham today and a leave of absence from Councillors Giles and Martin. I think everyone else is present. I will seek a mover and a seconder for the confirmation of the minutes. Moved by Councillor Cabada, seconded by Deputy Lord Mayor Noon. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you, great start. Members, any declarations of conflict of interest? Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a general conflict with agenda item 7.1 about the motorsport event consultation on the basis of Mr Warren's comments earlier that DIT had been consulted with about the roads, which I wasn't previously aware of. As I work for DIT, I just wanted to declare a general conflict, but I have no involvement and intend to participate in the debate and the vote.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone else today? All good. In that case, on no dictations, no workshops, we'll go straight into item 7.1, consultation on on the BP Adelaide Grand Final. Jo Derlak, would you like to assist?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. You've obviously heard the presentation this evening from the SA Motorsports Board, so I'll hand straight to the team for some opening remarks and just open to questions.
Thank you through the chair. This report contains a number of detailed recommendations in response to the request for consultation from the South Australian Motorsport Board on their proposed declarations under the Motorsport Act for the 2026 Adelaide Grand Final and the new associated motorsport event. These recommendations are presented relative to the Motorsport Board's obligations for consultation with Council under the Motorsport Act. Administration's recommendations include objectives ensuring key biodiversity areas are considered and protected as part of this consultation process. Recommendations 5.3 and 5.4 seek the removal of the butterfly conservation area, revegetation conservation zone and buffer conservation zones and Park 17, which form part of the current proposed declared area for this year's event. In addition, we have a recommendation in Recommendation 10 on an Eastern Parklands Community Reference Group, which is in addition to the legislative consultative requirements on the Motorsport Board under the Motorsport Board Act. We are mindful that the long-term success of major events within the Adelaide Parklands depends not only on statutory approvals, but also on maintaining community trust and social licence. Consultation occurred with Cattle at the meeting held last Thursday, the 26th of May, and these recommendations in this report have been updated to reflect their feedback. We are here for your questions and to gather your feedback as part of the consultation.
Wonderful. Members, at this point, we'll ask any questions of administration. Lord Mayor.
At Caterpillar, we had another item that was really important to understand at the same time, and that was the biodiversity survey. It doesn't seem to be here. Is it going to a different committee? How has that worked?
Jo, you able to assist with that?
It just was, it explained about the butterfly.
Ilya's coming to the
Thank you, and through the chair. With regard to an update on the progress of the key biodiversity areas, that was a report to Cattle for noting. So it wasn't scheduled to come, for example, to this particular committee. That is information, one, that Council will receive as part of the minutes and the papers of Cattle but if it's also the view to bring that particular update to committee, probably the City Planning, Development and Business Affairs Committee, we're able to bring that report as provided in the future.
It was just relevant, and we've got another biodiversity area in the mix, and also Johnny Brown Park as well, which is another development site. So there were some important issues that we have to get on top of, and I would recommend the Butterfly Association, whatever they're called, Herding Butterfly People, Herding Butterfly website, if anyone would like to understand the life cycle and breeding habits of the butterfly in question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Any additional questions at this point? Councillor Marr.
Following on from a couple of questions in the CEO briefing, at 5.9, requests Motorsport Board provide environmental rehabilitation bond. That's the remediation that occurs between Bump Out and Fringe, correct?
Thank you for the question. No, this is an additional measure that we're proposing as a recommendation in line with what, say, a mining company or anyone else like that would do if they're causing damage or incursions onto land to rehabilitate it.
Does that mean that we are expecting different impacts this year, or is this just a new financial measure?
Thank you for the question. This is something new. We do note that in the consultation letter on the second page, .2, it does refer to works underway for the MotoGPs. We're just trying to be prepared for anything.
Okay, Thank you.
Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, just a question about some of the items that will be included in the letter from the Lord Mayor, and it is a great exhaustive list generally. We've been specific in 5.8 as well as, just 5.8 about specific pieces of state and Commonwealth legislation that we want advice on in terms of obligations. Earlier, we did establish that there's other bits of legislation such as the National Parks and Wildlife Act, Aboriginal Heritage Places Act. Have we covered all legislation that applies in the letter that will be sent, or do we need to amend this to say we want advice on all legislation that applies?
Thank you for the question. The recommendations do touch on other aspects of relevant legislation, such as 5.5, which seeks advice on the role of independent ecological experts and traditional owners in determining acceptable use, but doesn't specifically call out those acts. Should council so desire, we could definitely add that to the recommendations.
I think that would be helpful, just so that it has to be answered. There's a lot of legislation, and the PDI Act actually does apply in some respects as well. So I think just being completely exhausted and listing everything would be helpful.
Councillor Stephen, and I've got Deputy Lord Mayor after that.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, a question for the administration in relation to paragraph 31 of the paper, which says that in 2011, Council entered into a deed with the State Minister, I believe it's the State Minister, pursuant to Section 205 of the Native Natural Resources Management Act, to protect and improve the native vegetation in the designated area. Can you just help me understand this? It sounds like we're being required by the state government to protect and improve native vegetation in a designated area, potentially from actions undertaken by the state government. So is that how to interpret this? We're being asked to protect against actions undertaken by the state government?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. It could be interpreted that way. Mechanically, just for visibility of the committee, these key biodiversity areas and those protections play through a structure that is through state legislation. That's why we enter into a deed with the state. The tensions do potentially then become, if there's any impact to those areas, the responsibilities that the city has to maintain, if they happen to be by the state, part of why we're calling them out. What is yet to be seen is what the final footprints are, and if they indeed do conflict with some of those intentions, and we'll certainly be bringing it to the attention of the relevant ministers and back to the state government that they're conflicting on objectives that they've sought for us to protect. That also extends to if we were to be handed back an area that has then been degraded, potentially technically under the protection of the, say, Motorsport Board Act, we would also bring that tension to bear, that we're not going to receive back an impacted area of land that we have management responsibility for under an agreement.
So just to, I think I understand it now, so we're duty bound to advise the Minister of where actions by the state government may be having an impact. Okay, I'll note that. My second question is the environmental bond. I think it's an interesting example of way to fund rehabilitation. Has Council previously used an environmental bond in a way such as this?
Thank you for the question. Through the Chair, not to my knowledge.
Do we know whether other councils in South Australia have successfully used that mechanism?
Thank you for the question, and through the Chair, no.
Thanks.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
I refer to 59, the removal of the toilet block. Now, I get a lot of questions around toilets when it comes to the events that we already have on our program. The request of the removal of the toilet block is interesting. In the formal request, did they actually also mention about replacement and if they would fund it and design it and all of that sort of thing?
Through the presiding member, I draw the member's attention to paragraph 6 of the recommendation.
Oh, wait a minute, sorry.
6 of the recommendation, which is agreement to removal of the toilet on the condition that the Motorsport Board provides necessary funding for a new toilet.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Cross.
In the presentation that we had earlier, it was stated that that it's not at a level of providing butterflies, the habitat there that we have. That was his declaration, but we're not on the same page on that one. Is that correct? And why is it that they can say that, but it's not the documents that we have doesn't state that is the case? Or why aren't we on the same page on that? Or where are they getting their information from? So do we have that report from them?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, we understand that through the presentation that was the representation of the Motorsport Board. At Cattletilla we did hear a deputation from a member of the Butterfly Conservation Association that spoke in detail to the prevalence of butterflies in that area and to their cohabitation symbiotic relationship with the native vegetation as well. Everything that we know from recent biodiversity survey has been reported through the linked biodiversity report, which is link number 4, in this report. And just at a high level, under section B, paragraphs 42 to 47 of this report details our knowledge of that area too.
Basically, that statement was incorrect, according to our reporting.
Thank you for the question. Yes, according to us.
Councillor Davis.
There's a lot in this report asking the Motorsports Board to do a whole bunch of things. Now, when it comes to experts, you can often find an expert that will tell you one thing if you pay them, and then if somebody else pays them, they'll say another thing. Or potentially you'll have an arborist, for example, might give, oh yeah, you could totally kill that, it's dangerous, and the other one will say absolutely not. Same thing with like heritage consultants. If you wanted to knock down a heritage home, for example, you wouldn't go to Sandy Wilkinson. Okay. This is basically...
Point of order. I don't think we need to be naming...
No, he's a massive heritage conservationist. And
ruling on the point of order.
Look, I'm hearing a point of order. I've heard... I did think it was unnecessary, but I also didn't think it was technically an insult either. But
no,
Councillor Davis, I'll ask you to refrain from mentioning other people outside of the...
Yeah, he's a heritage conservationist. And so experts don't necessarily all give you the same view. Now, I'm concerned that we're placing all these reports and all these requests for information completely in their hands. And in my view, they're going to go and get reports which would complement what they already want to do. For example, it says, is it okay to have this many race cars events in the city? Will that kill the butterflies? I suspect the report will come back and say, no, it's fine. Doesn't the council have a much greater role in seeking its own advice to protect its own ecological interests? And why aren't we doing anything about that?
Yeah, I suppose I'll talk to a couple of those points, and maybe if I miss one, come back to them. Certainly there's a number of recommendations that seek independent advice, but also advice which is required under the Motorsport Act that we haven't been privy to at this point in time. So if you look at effectively 5.1 and 5.2, that includes the provision of independent publicly released pre- and post-event ecological monitoring, including the cumulative impact over multiple years. So the board should have been doing that over a period of time and should be able to provide us that information. So over time we think is a good measure as well to be able to understand cumulative impacts. So we're trying to effectively look at the areas that the board is responsible for and effectively call them for that independent information. Then subsequent to that, effectively available to council, then council can make an understanding or determination of what else it would like to do.
Right.
And we think that that's a fiscally responsible but also publicly transparent way of working with these recommendations. But if the committee has another point of view, happy to take that on board.
Well, because, my concern is independent is whatever that means. Often independents are hired guns, right? So lawyers are generally independent until you start paying them. And whether you're the prosecutor or the defendant, they'll act for you. Right. So
and through the chair, I think the other bit for us that's missing in here is if you look at 5.6, even if it is independent, but it's what's the advice that talks about effectively the carrying capacity of these parks to be able to undertake motorsport events. So there will be a limit effectively of what you can do in the parks that where we don't have we don't kill the golden egg. So what is that carrying capacity that happens? And that happens in other tourism locations all over the world. Right. So what is the advice that they've got in those sort of areas that we can then interrogate and see whether it's appropriate or not?
Okay, and in that case, then there's got to be a timeline here. Say, if you've got the information, give it to us. If you're not going to give it to us within the next 2 weeks, then what are we going to do about that? Because if they sit on this until September, or when do we go into caretaker? Around that time, the council then can't do anything. They then go and do all their works. All the consultation comes out from us. All the works are completed by early next year when the council's just getting inducted, and we won't be able to get reports in place which would counter and actually give us information, experts that we engage who might err on the side of protecting the environment rather than err on the side of implementing races, will completely run out of time. So I'm concerned that if we don't say, give it to us in 2 weeks, and then for the council to start scoping out what reports we can get by ourselves, by our own entities, I fear that, I do fear we have a duty to protect our parklands. That's within our remit as a council from the state government, as Councillor Stevensford said. But what kind of time frame here do we actually allow them, or is it infinite?
So through the chair, effectively, if you look at 5.7, we're seeking a briefing specifically on the motorsport GP, including the environmental impacts on the National Heritage listed parklands by the 15th of June. And I think you heard a commitment from Mr Warren today to certainly be back with the circuit configuration in July. So those are the pieces that I think effectively will allow us to be able to meet timelines in terms of your concerns.
Okay, well, in that case, couldn't we also start to scope out and identify our own expert, which on the provision of this information to us, we already then have a scope to then go and interrogate what they're then putting. Because I would like to get our own advice on this, not rely on their independence. I'd prefer to rely on our independence. Can we add that to the motion?
Chair, I'll be guided by the committee in terms of any amendments I'd like to make to the recommendations.
And look, when it gets to the moving of a motion, I'm certainly happy to indulge in an amendment if that's your choice to do so. I think this is a very, very thorough piece of work by the administration, but we can always tack on more, 100%. I've got Councillor Freeman, then Deputy Lord Mayor, then Lord Mayor. So Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. A few more questions based on what we talked about in the CEO briefing. I just wanted to confirm these points are covered by the current recommendation. So firstly, the inclusion of businesses or residents within the declared area, which makes them permitted entrance under the regulations. And Mr Warren said that the door may be open for more properties to be included in that declared area. I think seeking advice on that process and what's already been agreed to would be useful. I don't think that's covered in the recommendation now.
Thank you for the question. If I can refer to the report under section 23 of the Act, the Motorsport Board must take all reasonable steps to consult with and take into account representations of persons affected by their operations, including 2.3, any person whose business or financial interests might, in the opinion of the board, be adversely affected by the operations of the board. So we'd anticipate them to cover that contact there. Should council seek a specific recommendation, we would have to craft something to add into this set of recommendations.
Okay, thank you. When we get to the debate, we can talk about that. The second one was we asked about the interaction between the motorsport events and then other events such as the Fringe, and Mr Warren clarified, well, the staging actually avoids that clash or overlap. But I think there's lots of events and it would be good to query what they've actually considered in their staging to ensure there's no overlap. Is that in our recommendation?
Thank you. Through the chair, not specifically. No, we'd have to add that.
Okay, great. Thank you. And finally, car parks. So it was clarified to us that there's a like for like based on the previous year's event of 1,500 car parks, and that the previous area would not be available, but it's a contingency. So that's not yet confirmed. So it's a question, but I don't think the recommendation at the moment asks for confirmation of the car parking arrangement or when they will know when they need that car parking area, or when does it no longer become a contingency and it's actually a hard requirement.
Thank you for the question. No, we haven't engaged in that way. We've simply asked for the removal of Park 17, which we know is to be considered as a car park just in its entirety from the declared area.
So, Council, yes, from my view, the council's taken a stronger position than just that through the advice of Caterpillar, which was that we reject the use of Park 17 for car parking. So, but yes, no. The next one, next person I have is Deputy Lord Mayor.
Sorry about this, but I'm back on the toilet block. Just point 6, we actually all good on the condition that SA Motorsport provide the necessary funding for a new toilet block to be built in Vic Park. There's no timelines here. So what does that actually mean? They remove the toilet block? We want it reinstated? What's the timeline around this?
Through the presiding member, we only agreed to a removal provided we're satisfied with a proposal about a reinstatement. So that'd be a matter of design, but also timing.
Should we put timing in, agreed to timelines in?
I think it's more than adequately covered by the recommendation.
Lord Mayor.
Sorry, we're still asking questions. I don't.
Yes, that's what this point, Lord Mayor.
I think that my understanding from the biodiversity survey was that we had experts that worked on that assessment, so we didn't just make it up, or that they were the experts, and they produced the documentation of the species that were there. So I feel quite comfortable we've got expert advice, and we don't need to take advice from the Motorsport Board. Part 8 is the one that worries me now, because now having read the Motorsport Act, and the limitations of the EPA, I don't know whether the environmental benefit principle is valid. Can you just help me about that? Because I don't understand whether they have any obligation to comply.
Through you and the chair, I think it was more an overview to actually say, knowing the number of biodiversity positive policy objectives that are out there, including at federal and state, is that we should really think about how we can demonstrate measurable net positive biodiversity outcomes from the events, rather than a keep the same or degrade. So it was saying, how can we as an event not actually just maintain status quo, continue to do remediation or rehabilitation, but actually make a better biodiversity outcome? So that was our aspirations.
Is this understandable to the motorsport people, because it's quite complicated wording?
I wouldn't like to comment on behalf of the Motorsport Board. Lord, yeah.
Councillor Davis.
In relation to point 10, it says to bring together a diverse range of community perspectives. I mean, from speaking to people today, one guy absolutely loved it, and then everyone else I talked to absolutely hated it. I'm concerned that diversity means that we'll have one of each. You know, businesses that are in favour of it, business that's against it. I'm not really sure how. Like, I like the idea of having like a board, or I mean, I prefer to consult with all of the South. Ward or along East Terrace, those residents, and actually ask them what they think about it, so we can push that back to the state government. But how exactly is that going to work? Because I don't think it's going to work if there's just 3 people for the race and 3 people against the race, and then they're just going to send the state government not much.
Yeah, and through the chair, we've seen this example work well in other contentious issues. It's designed to actually have diverse voices, so you can take into account collective views and actually try to work together on what might be possible solutions going forward, rather than effectively having voices not heard or effectively understood. So what we're looking for in this space is to understand small businesses plus large businesses, residents that live right beside the red line, residents that live effectively impacted through road closures. What does it actually mean for them in their everyday lives, and therefore what do they need to be actually able to be more successful in bringing both a win-win solution for all? That's the intent of 10, because we don't have anything facilitated currently to bring those voices in a collective, considered way, rather than effectively a collection of individuals.
Okay. This consultation is with us, right? So can other people make submissions to this process? Is that?
Yes, and I think if you have a look back effectively, this is a consultation to council, so if you have a look in the report, which is 2 in the discussion paper, so the South Australian Motorsport Board has 3 things that they need to be able to consult on. What they're here today is consulting on number 2.1. They're consulting with us as council over their right of occupation of the declared area. But they are also accountable to effectively get consultation from any person being their neighbours or any person who's impacted from a business and financial interest. So everyone has the opportunity to go directly to the South Australian Motorsport Board, and they also must take reasonable steps to consult.
Okay, and so on that point, how many people will even know about it? Because what we saw with North Adelaide, nobody knew really. What role does the council, can it play in terms of actually advertising that people can have a view on this and consult with the board?
I think I'll be led by effectively what the Chamber would do. We have a range of social media and plus communication abilities to be able to call people together, but really the role is actually of the Motorsport Board to do that. So we can help encourage people. If someone goes directly to the Motorsport Board, we obviously don't have visibility of their feedback. We can consult our lessees. We can do a number of things before the 15th of June in terms of that space. But the real consultation is actually in the role of the Motorsport Board.
I'd also suggest that perhaps that's a role for elected members as well when you're out in your communities, encouraging them to make their voices heard to Motorsports Board, as well as the formal consultation that's coming between Motorsports Board and Council. The more voices, the better. Councillor Couros, I do see you.
Going on further for point 10, I assume that you want to set up this Eastern Parklands Community Reference Group as a point to be able to communicate to you in regards to the road closures and what is affecting them. There will be a terms of reference created for this, is that right? And will that be coming into council for us to consider? And will you be looking at outside of the City of Adelaide for the roads, people that are affected coming into the city from the outskirts of the eastern side of it?
Thank you for the question through the chair. Yes, and yes to all of your questions.
Okay.
Members, I'll now seek a move and a seconder. I reckon... Councillor Marr?
Councillor Freeman asked a question before about certain pieces of legislation. It was asked about 5.8.
Through the presiding member, when you get to a resolution, I can assist with an amendment.
Okay.
Can we workshop a proposed motion?
That was my thinking, so I'll just seek advice from governance for 1 second. All right, I'm happy then, before we move it and second it, to actually workshop some wording with the assistance of CEO and administration, noting that there was 2 specific suggestions made. So, Councillor Davis, I'm happy to start with your suggestion.
So my suggestion, and I would seek some assistance with wording, but essentially to prepare a recommendation for council, prepare a budget and identify experts who could provide advice to council regarding the information that will be provided to us by the Motorsports Board.
Through the presiding member, can I clarify whether that is investigations in relation to the BP Grand Final or the 2007 MotoGP?
I think by June they're giving us information regarding the grand final. That's our request here. So it would be in relation to those reports that are requested in item, was it 5? Yeah, in 5.
Okay, noting that the item 5 includes a specific request to exclude the butterfly zone from the declared area.
Yeah.
It includes a specific request to exclude the revegetation conservation zones and the buffer conservation zones. So
Yeah.
they're already out of play. We don't need further advice in relation to that.
Unless they bring them in. So if they say no,
Well, that becomes a different matter.
yeah.
I take
Could
your
you
point,
could
but
you scope it for us? So essentially, what I'd like.
I'm happy to provide an undertaking that should the Motorsport Board decline those requests, we
Yeah.
can come back with an investigation scope.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think we've already been given through the presentation a preparedness to consider the exclusion of some of the zones that they originally proposed.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't want to engage an expert if they're saying that obviously,
Yeah.
but I would like the council administration to, the intent of the amendment would be to identify and assign a budget to, so identify
Through the
experts.
presiding member, I'm happy to give an undertaking that doesn't require an amendment.
I would really much prefer an amendment.
I think the CEO has provided advice that the undertaking will be given, and you'll be credited for that if that's what you're after, Councillor Davis.
No, I just want to
I
make
think
sure
we're all on the same. I think we're all working together for a
I-
positive.
No, I do
I'm
want
not
to
going to
end the
enter the
motion.
debate, presiding member. A new 11?
Yeah, thank
A
you.
new 11? Determines, in the event that the South Australian Motorsport Board declines the request for removal of areas identified at 5.3 and 5.4.
Yeah.
For removal, yes, yes. Removal of areas, yeah. I'd note that this is signalling to the Motorsport Board that we will do investigations
Yeah.
of our own volition.
And because all the other reports that they're proposing, that we're asking for, like the information that they have, my intention as well was to actually prepare to evaluate that and get our own expert in.
Without wanting to lead from a chair, is there a risk that by putting that in there, you're potentially giving the Motorsports Board an out that, we can go ahead and keep it in because we're going to do additional what have yous anyway? Is that a risk with what you're proposing?
No, I see a very short time period that we have as a council to act, and we need to, if we're going to have an impact on this, we need to have all of our ducks in a row and not follow their lead. So we need to take the initiative, and I want to be prepared I think the council should identify experts to get our own advice and to scrutinise that immediately. So when those reports, if they do come back in, that's number one. And then if they don't remove them, then I think that we should be prepared very quickly as a council to make a submission.
I just think, politically speaking, what you're doing is potentially offering an out for something that the CEO has already said could be done as an undertaking.
No, I don't think. I'm saying we're gearing up. If they take that out, we're gearing up to go them.
We have persuasive power.
Does the committee wish me to proceed with assistance?
I'm CEO. From the chair, I'm happy for you to proceed, and then perhaps we'll take motion in parts anyway, because there's going to be additional.
Just a question on this: is this a significant addition?
Let the CEO please finish the part 11.
Determines in the event that the South Australian Motorsport Board declines the request for removals of areas identified at 5.3 and 5.4, or provides unsatisfactory advice in relation to other requests that the administration scope and cost proposals to inform council's final decisions in relation to the matter.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
And can I float another suggestion as well? In relation to in relation to that last point, that I would like to inform businesses and those impacted that they have the right. So whatever council channels has available to inform residents that they can make submissions, I'd like the council to take steps to do so to inform them.
Right, that's a new 12.
Yeah.
I think they know.
They don't know.
The City of Adelaide administration, through its marketing channels, promotes the opportunity for the business and residential community to make submissions through the South Australian Motorsport Board consultation process.
Thank you. Perfect.
Sorry, guys. In front of 12, rather than that, request the administration take it to the city level. City level, yeah. Channel says 2 L's. Through the capital S.
Councillor Davis, that reflects your intention?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Freeman, I know you also had some...
I know you also addressed it.
Of course.
Okay. If you're happy for some assistance, Councillor Freeman?
Yes, please, CEO.
Right, it'll be a new 5.9 to keep the correspondence logical. The new 5.9. No, after 5.8. Good to go? Request the South Australian Motorsport Board advise on how obligations contained within the Aboriginal Heritage Act 1998
Is it 1988?
1988.
That's 90th, sorry.
I said 8. Forgive our admin, they're working pretty hard. Aboriginal Act, capital A for Act, comma. Planning, Infrastructure and Development Act.
Planning Development Infrastructure Act.
Planning, Development and PDI. I prefer PID, Public Interest Disclosure.
You're not entering the debates here.
What's the year?
National Parks and Wildlife. Oh, the year 2016.
2016. National Parks and Wildlife. You got a year, Councillor?
1972.
And other relevant acts from there? Will be met. Government?
Yes, it does. Just National Parks and Wildlife Act and Planning Development and Infrastructure Act.
And it renumbers 510 onwards.
Councillor Freeman, does that reflect?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Councillor Steve, do you want to make an addition yourself or speak to the item?
I did, Chair.
Of course.
Wonderful. I believe this may be new 514. I haven't raised it until now, but last year, and I checked our meeting papers last year, we had written to the Motorsport Board requesting their support for increasing tree canopy cover in the area. Now, I know that this is all about really trying to protect lots of trees, but they have previously, my understanding, made a commitment to this. And I only raise it because community members have been asking me, what's the evidence for this? I had a question and notice on it only a month or so ago, and it wasn't clear what the Motorsport Board has actually done. So I'm suggesting, with the support of members, that we add a 5.15, which seeks advice on the extent to which the SA Motorsport Board has contributed toward increasing canopy cover in Victoria Park, Packer Picanti, as per previous council requests.
Excellent. We'll get you set a bit slower.
I'm
so that
happy to
staff
email
can...
it through, Chair, if that's of assistance.
Would that work better for you? Yes, email it through, thank you. I think it's just in the ether.
Just got it, Catherine. Or I could speak more slowly.
Speak it slowly, thank you, Councillor.
I'll do it the old school way. Yep, thank you.
Okay. All right, I think we've got a landing. I would now seek a move. I'm going to offer Councillor Davis, as you've made a few suggestions. Councillor Freeman, would you like a second? You've also put a bit of work into it. Before we progress further, without wanting to lead from the chair too much, would we be able to take elements of it in part? I think. Yeah, Councillor Davis, would you like to speak to it as a mover before we go any further?
Yeah, thank you for everyone for the suggestions. Look, what I'm worried about is that time is rapidly advancing and that we won't have time to properly do what I think is our role in speaking with the community, informing them and getting as much information as we can together on this, and then also letting them know that they can have an input. I don't think many people at all know that this consultation about the grand final is coming up, and so whatever channels we have, we should use them so that people can make that formal submission. In relation to expert advice, I'd like to identify and do that work now, because we can do that work now as to who could inform the council. Whether we need it at all, we might even have the ability within the council and also a potential budget. I want to turn our mind to getting our own opinion on this. Now, it may be the case that the state government has supreme power in relation to this matter, but at the same time, I've seen just how effective community consultations and that community kind of movement can be. And whilst council isn't going to be the person who's running around formally getting petitions signed, for example, we can absolutely inform that debate, and we have an important role to play in that discussion. That's why I think this approach is a good way forward, so that we're prepared to meet the challenges that we're going to have head on and support the community in their view and support them in that consultation going forward. I think we have to do our job in this and protect the interests of our parklands.
Councillor Freeman, you're second. Would you like to speak?
Sure, Chair. Just a few short remarks, starting with it is wonderful to be collaborating with the mover of this motion, given we seem to be very much on the same page. I commend the administration for being so thorough in this recommendation and also stressing the urgency of getting this advice. I think this does cover off every element. And really, I think I'll leave it there. I hope that this is met in good faith by the SA Motorsport Board and that we do have information back by the 15th of June, ideally, and failing that, July. But other than that, I think this is, there's lots of questions here. Let's see what we get back.
Members, would anyone else like to speak on this at this point? I will quickly speak before handing back to the mover. Just to thank the staff for all work that's gone into this. In particularly, I appreciate the inclusion of the advice and the work from Caterpillar. I acknowledge the Lord Mayor's role in the chair of that board. We were quite thorough in our interrogation of Motorsports chair, and I think that has completely been brought into this motion as well. As we know, the council does have very little power due to the Motorsports Act. Most of this item is noting, is requesting, and is seeking advice. One key exception, actually, I think, is the toilet block, and that's it. And that's the strongest bit we've got in here, which is we're not approving something until we've got a commitment. So the bit of strength we actually have in here is about the toilet block, if nothing else. It's a bit of irony. Bit of irony there. So the best we can do is try and be as thorough as we can, and I think this motion, by and large, shows that. And I just want to thank Council, the committee, for coming together and working together and being as thorough as possible. We are going to take it in parts. I'm just seeking advice from governments, which is why I'm not stopped talking yet, giving as much time as possible to keep running. Yep. Okay. All right. I think because the amendments impact the ordering, we have to do it in a specific way. So just try and follow my logic here. We'll go. Councillor Davis did. Seconder. Take it in parts.
Mover, do you want to? I'm happy to do it en bloc if the mover's happy.
All right. In that case, Councillor Davis, would you like to sum up? Members, all those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, now we go on to item 7.2, the draft parklands leasing and licensing policy. I'll move by Councillor Seabright, second by the Lord Mayor. Would you like to speak on it, Councillor Seabright?
Reserve my right.
Lord Mayor?
It was discussed at Caterpillar quite extensively.
Summed up.
Summed up.
All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. All right. We're now on item 7.3, the draft sister city and international arrangement policies. Happy to have discussion on this one. Joe, would you like to? Oh, we've got to move this.
I wanted to move, I just wanted to say something.
So, in that case, Lord Mayor moves, seconded by Councillor Corris. Lord Mayor, you're a mover, please speak.
I understand there's an unease about spending money on sister cities, but there doesn't seem to be any strategy to do anything. It's a policy here, and we've embarked on a half relationship with Athens, and the report just tells us how we could avoid doing anything with that, and we might let it lapse. The consultant's report similarly did not give us any direction about what we should be doing, and it doesn't even suggest the most obvious thing, which is that Georgetown was founded in 1786, so they're 250th will be at the same time as our 200th. And if we don't spend any money until then, I would have thought that's one obvious time that we should be celebrating. It also, it's a very clear desktop analysis, but I can't see a way forward. And I think we need to consider what we're going to do if we want to enhance the relationship with Athens, if we're going to ever have delegations, and if we're going to have, I've been asked about a garden to match our Georgetown, our Himeji garden, which is, has been suggested for Christchurch. So that would be quite a big investment, and I'm not quite sure what grows in Christchurch. I suspect it's the same as the stuff that grows here. But there are various things we could do and fit it into our annual plan, but I can't see there's any real way forward in this.
And I will just note as well, Lord Mayor, this is for it to go out to consultation as well. So obviously that we'll go out to consultation, come back to us, and we'll have ample opportunity then to delve deeper into the concerns that you've raised. Councillor Curran?
I need to say that this is for consultation, take on board what the Lord Mayor is saying, but it'd be good just to get moving on it and get it out there and bring it back in, and if we have to redefine anything, then that will be the opportunity to do so.
Councillor Stephen.
Perhaps echoing the Lord Mayor's comments, if this was up for adoption tonight as a policy, I wouldn't be supporting it because I feel like I'm underwhelmed in what we're doing in this space. It seems like there's an extraordinary opportunity to be able to further connect with other cities around the world and learn from them and learn how we can, whether it's be innovative or learn from their mistakes as well. So I'll be interested to see what comes back in the public consultation feedback, but I do think we need to look at working a little bit harder. And one of the opportunities is around how do members get more directly involved. And I think the only time I got directly involved in a sister city discussion was in a dinner upstairs here. I felt like I learned a lot in the space of about 1.5 hours over dinner, and outside of that there haven't been too many other opportunities. So I support this tonight, but I think we've still got a fair bit of work to do to really make the most of these arrangements.
Councillor Freeman.
Just a boring comment, Chair, about page 47 of the pack, page 5 of the draft policy, the related documents. It lists most of the City of Adelaide strategies except for the integrated transport strategy, and that's interesting to me because when we're talking about sister cities, we're talking about people visiting who aren't from Adelaide generally, and the transport network in the city is a really important part of that. Where can you walk? Where is it not very nice to walk? So just making that comment, I'm not sure why that's omitted because I think it informs transport planning and helps us have a more integrated network, getting that outside perspective.
Members, any more? Councillor Davis?
I mean, we could do something with it. At the moment, yeah, we don't really deal that much with our sister cities. Or I'm not sure how often the administration actually meet with their counterparts and have a chat with them about what they're doing. I mean, the intention, I thought, was that you might have cities which are founded around the same time or have similar demographics or growth and essentially like learn from each other, or whether it's like a strategic business kind of connection. So to me, I think that we should figure out if there is actually worthwhile setting up a regular connection between staff and counterparts if they meet every 6 months and say, hey, how's your trees and the roads going? And yeah, we're doing the same thing and it's not going well, or it is going well, or whatever it is. And likewise, if there are actual identifiable business links between the two cities, can we actually have a hub, or probably through the administration again, of their interests? So if we're producing X and sister city needs Y, can we facilitate trade between the two cities? So I think probably we should, I mean, we can go out to consultation, but I think we probably need to rejig what the whole thing means, because we probably can't call them up and ask them for, some money. That's not that kind of relationship. But if we're going to have some sort of either strategic or information sharing relationship, then we should formalise that, maintain it, or not do it at all.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
I'm just keen on if these discussions have been had at our, at our reconciliation committees or our Indigenous groups. I feel like it's more a symbolic sort of element rather than really embedding it into perhaps some of our, the Ghana leadership, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island engagement. I just think that a lot of, countries, their history, their Indigenous people play such an important part, and I'm not sure if we actually work with that as much as we possibly can.
Is that a question for administration? Would you like?
No, I'd just like to know a bit more about what we do around that space.
Through the chair, I might effectively ask Ms. Kalionis or the team to effectively provide some commentary back.
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. As the report indicates, consultation occurred with Pam Pali on the 11th of February, and we do have regular engagement with that forum. Should the policy be endorsed to proceed to consultation and then return, we would definitely engage with the Reconciliation Committee going forward on those potentials.
Lord Mayor, would you like to sum up?
Yes, just briefly to say one of the recommendations in here was to work with the state, and I tried to do that after the Penang visit because it occurred to me that we were a very small part of the metro area, and when it was set up there was an observation that we were of the same size and had the same industrial base. Actually, we're not of the same size. They have 1.7 million people and we have 29,000 people. So it's a completely different entity, and actually the relationship is with the whole metropolitan area. So if you read today's paper, Safcol is expanding. That's owned by someone I met at lunch in Penang. So there's a massive industrial and commercial and building investment from Penang, but we don't reflect the other end of that relationship. The other thing is that the thing that I disliked about this report, I have to say, is that it doesn't talk about the city networks. I think we're part of a dozen networks between like cities doing environmental planning, all sorts of things, and it doesn't count as a sister city because it's not called a sister city, but it's actually a more vibrant relationship because there's exchange with the EU and all sorts of toing and froing. And the other thing that it doesn't have in here is we actually had our first relationship in 1920, but the desktop analysis didn't come up with that because we rebuilt the city of Dernancourt. And when you go to the Somme, you go into the school and it's amazing. Every wall is covered with pictures of Adelaide because we fundraised and rebuilt the town like Villers-Bretonneux. So we actually haven't even got the whole history in here. And while we're about it, page 16 has got a weird picture of the Royal Adelaide Hospital, which seems to have no relationship to anything. Can we move it before we consult?
Members, that's summed up. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Unanimous. We now, item 7.4, the Community Wellbeing Strategy. And I'll ask Joe Abdoliak to please introduce the item.
And through the Chair, I'll hand straight over to the team to effectively just highlight the key points and then effectively ask for questions.
Thank you through the chair. The draft strategy is a deliverable of the strategic plan. Implementation of the strategy will support city population growth targets by ensuring our city remains a place where people can thrive at every stage of life. In February, Council endorsed the draft strategy for public consultation, which was open for 4 weeks through March and April. As well as the community support that we've outlined in the report, the summary of the public consultation shows strong alignment with key
Lord Mayor,
government...
Councillor Corras. Apologies, I'm struggling to hear.
...and non-government agencies, including the Department of Human Services, COTA SA, Heart Foundation and Welcoming Australia. We're open to take any questions from committee members on the report.
Members, any questions? Councillor Marr?
Can we just have a really quick summary of any changes that were made, or if there are none, there were none? As a result of the consultation.
Paragraph 8 onwards in the report. Our feedback has shaped the draft policy.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Stevenshire.
I was happy to move it, actually, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Seabringer. I seek a seconder. Councillor Kabada. Councillor Seabringer, would you like to speak to the mic? Councillor Kabada. Councillor Freeman, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge there actually was a pretty good response rate to this draft strategy, especially compared to the long-term financial plan. There were 156 responses to this one, and 80% of them supported it. And I know last time we spoke about this strategy, there was a bit of rhetoric about what is this when we've got all these other strategies. There's a lot of overlap, but I think the response from the community does verify that this is very much wanted and supported. So that's good to see. The other thing that's interesting to me is what the people that supported this strategy supported specifically. I'm seeing in here that people want green space, community centres, grants, subsidiaries, art. We've heard that all before, and this is almost an unintended consultation on the budget, I think, and maybe where some of those gaps are that we could address in the future. So I know that whilst there's a year one implementation plan, there isn't necessarily budget attached to doing anything with this, and given where we are in the budget process, that probably is not going to change in the next financial year, but just wanted to commend the consultation process that's happened, and I think it should be referred to in future when we're working out what we want to fund for the community.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. And if no one else would like to speak, I'll also thank the staff for the excellent work on this body of work, and echo the comments made from Councillor Freeman about the excellent consultation process. It's a really good thing to see. Councillor Seabringer, summed up. Members, all those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, we're on the final item of the night, item 7.5, a beach volleyball facility. Councillor Kabada? Moved. Seek a seconder. Councillor Davis. Councillor Kabada, would you like to speak? Councillor Davis, as a seconder, would you like to speak? Would anyone else like to speak on this item?
Summed up.
Okay, I was going to say a few words, but it's been summed up. Members, those in favour? Unanimous again. Thank you. That concludes the meeting.